Hi, my name is Janice Lee, and today I'm going to be speaking with you about taking inventory for the changing seasons of your life. This topic is going to talk a little bit about how different changes in your life affect how you need to estate plan, or what we would prefer to call legacy plan. I hope you enjoy the talk. So again, I'm Janice Lee. I'm an accredited senior appraiser. I'm the owner of Harvest Estate and Appraisal Services, and I have been doing this type of work for over 14 years. What are some of life's changing seasons? So in this, what can be considered the spring of some people's lives, you're single or you might be recently married. In the summer of your life, you might experience having children, purchasing a new home. In the fall of your life, you may be downsizing, or you might be donating to a museum or to a charity. And then in the winter of your life, there is death and divorce. And though you may be different ages when these things occur in your life, these are things that all require that you go back and revisit estate planning or legacy planning. Now, I do want to be clear. I'm going to be sharing with you around a lot of issues of estate planning. I am not an attorney, so I definitely would defer to an attorney. But after being in this industry for 14 years, I've had a lot of families. I've seen some stories, some good, some bad, some very disturbing, some sad, and my own experiences with dealing with my parents' death. I want you to imagine that you're in a car accident and you instantly slip into a coma. You don't have any estate planning procedures in place. Who's going to take care of your intended medical directive? And some of these terms have already come up in the previous presentation. Who's going to continue to pay your bills and make sure your finances are in order? In addition, who are going to care for your children and your home? And if you should pass away, God forbid, where do your assets go? You have just created a mess beyond your death. It will end up costing your heirs a fortune, out-of-pocket expenses, and possibly their relationship with others as well. There is a lot of fighting that goes on around the death event. You know, I've heard it said that you see the good and the bad, mainly in two events, weddings and death. Unfortunately, the bad does show up. But I've seen some families that are united and on the same page and working together. So you may be saying, well, what do I need to help me? All right, so we're going to take a little quiz. Who has a room-by-room inventory of the items in their home? I see one hand. I do. I can't get up here and tell y'all to do it, and I don't have it. So it's good to have that inventory of the items in your home. Yes. Who's going to take care of that pet? Medical power of attorney. It's the legal document that authorizes someone you trust to make medical decisions on your behalf. General power of attorney. It's a legal document that where the principal gives another person, called the agent, the power to manage the principal's assets and financial affairs while the principal is alive. Proper beneficiary designations. So you know those bank accounts, those 401k plans. Have you named the people that you want to receive those? And remember, the changing seasons in your life may dictate those need to be updated. And life insurance. So we're going to talk a little bit about my parents. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about my personal experience with this process. So here are my parents. My mom passed away in 2017. And my mom did an amazing job of providing what I feel like this process is. It's a roadmap for you. She had a will. She had power of attorney papers. She had my name on her safety deposit box. She had given me a copy of the key. She had provided me a list of all the account information, her mortgage, her credit cards, her lender, her doctor. She had provided a list, and she had a copy of this information not only in the safety deposit box, she had mailed a copy to my sister and myself. Now, one of the things that's really important when you start thinking about legacy planning is family dynamics. Now, my mother and father didn't stay married. They were divorced. and my mother remarried. So when I was settling her estate, I was dealing with her second husband. And so I do recall saying to my mom, not from a standpoint of, I was so concerned about her things. I wasn't concerned about her things, but really this process is an opportunity for you to tell people how you want things to go once you close your eyes. And so for my mother, it was very important for her to leave legacy. And she wanted to make sure that she left things for my daughter. And so I said to her, Mom, you know, it's important that you keep this paperwork current. Mom, what does the state law say? Is it a joint property state? A lot of times in the cases of a marriage, it's automatically assumed that you and your husband have purchased these things together. And so if you die, they would go to him. You know, so she did put a lot of things in place to make sure that the things that she had acquired prior to her second marriage, that she was able to leave them clear and free. It was mentioned in the discussion earlier about memory. My mother had cancer. She had bladder cancer for 3 years. She fought it. But the medication, the treatments, and she could feel that she could no longer make the decisions. My mother was very much into real estate, rental properties, and she could not manage those things anymore. And that was not her new husband's forte. And so I did enact the power of attorney. And I was surprised that they wanted proof from the doctor. So I had to get a letter from her doctor saying that they were in agreement that we could enact the power of attorney, because she had some property that she wanted sold because her husband was her caregiver. Even though I was flying back and forth to take care of her, he was her main caregiver, and he was with her. He was by her side all the time. And so she had these additional properties, and he just did not have the fortitude to manage that and manage her. And so she said, I need you to take care of this. I need you to sell this for me. And so we enacted power of attorney, and I worked out on her behalf as her agent to get that property sold, because that's what she wanted me to do. Now, I did confer with my attorney in Maryland, though I was in Washington State, because I took care of all of the estate paperwork myself when she transitioned. And I do work with clients in Maryland who, some of them will take on the paperwork themselves and some will hire an attorney. Now, when you go to file for an estate, you'll go to the Office of the Wills, whichever county you're here in Maryland, and they'll give you a packet of information. And some clients look at that information and say, oh no, I can't do this. And then some clients call an attorney and say, oh, they cost too much. I'm going to do this. So it really depends on, you know, if you're feeling equipped. And I find that I've had clients who have not hired attorneys, and they're going through their paperwork and they're asking me questions. And I am able to provide them guidance because I've done the work in Maryland and because of the work that I did with my own mother. But I always defer to an attorney. I'm not the attorney. But my personal experience can at least help me to give you a bigger perspective. Then there was my dad. My father passed in 2004. His scenario is totally different. No will. So I get a phone call. My father suffered from asthma. He was driving his car. He had an asthma attack. He couldn't get to his inhaler. Thank God he was able to pull his car off the freeway before he lost consciousness, not hit anybody, not injure anybody. The car was still running in drive on an upward incline. They broke the window out and took him to the hospital. He was on life support for 2 days, and his organs begin to fail. And I get a phone call back here in Maryland. We have to take him off of life support. His organs are failing. At that point, when this is how we discovered there was no will. So my dad was very close to his brother. He had a key to his apartment. Again, being able to access these things is going to be very important. We're looking through the apartment. There's no keys. And though I found myself in the position of being the executor, there were 3 children. I'm the middle child. And he had told a cousin, if anything ever happens to me, everything's in the safe deposit box. So I was like, he never told me that, but okay. So we go to the bank. We go to the safety deposit box, which I don't have a key for. My name is not on it. They go in, they look at the paperwork, they come back. Well, actually, my name was on the safety deposit box. He had put my name on there, but he didn't tell me. We get there, they go in, they come back, they say, who's Janice? That's me. We go in and they look with a bank representative. We look in the box. There's no will. Well, at that point, they won't let us do anything else. Now we have to go get an attorney. So we secured an attorney. The attorney drew up the paperwork that made me the executor, and we began the process of settling his affairs. Now, my father had begun burial payments, but he did not complete those payments. So that left us scrambling because in Washington State, they freeze everything for 30 days. So we had no money to work with. His bank account had been frozen. So we're scrambling, trying to borrow money to bury him. Luckily, we were able to get it together and go ahead with the burial. But because everything was frozen, he was buried and I had to return back to Seattle after 30 days to work on his estate. Okay, so two very contrasting scenarios. No direction and direction that was clear, talked about with documentation to help me maneuver this path that we take on when we're talking about working with an estate. With my dad, there were some things that the Lord did with me around my father, you know, prior to me, the last time I saw him. I can remember the last conversation I had with him. And I recall the Lord saying, tell him you love him. And I was thinking, now, this was my father. This was our relationship. Well, why would I say that? Because I already know what his response is going to be. And the Lord was like, no, do it. So he came over to the window to say goodbye to me. And I was like, I love you, Dad. And he didn't respond because that was my father. But, it was really the fact that I finished our relationship on a good note, that I was able to take on the role as executor and honor him. Even though our relationship was not close, I was still able to go forth and take care of it anyway. What I wanted to share next is a list, the responsibilities of an executor. Now, it's a list of 50 items. I'm just going to cover a few, and I want you to look at the responsibility that executor has, whether it's you personally or whether you're hiring an attorney to take care of it, so that you just understand the immense responsibility that it takes to, quote unquote, close out somebody's life. So the first thing I have up here again is inventorying, because that's what I do. I'm the person that's called in to take care of inventory. So when I come into the house, and back to this discussion of having an inventory, we're inventorying the car, the boat, the furniture, the paintings, the collections, the coin collections, the stamp collections, the silver, everything that's in the home. And estate sales aren't always necessarily that someone is passed. Sometimes someone's downsizing. They're moving to one of these assisted living communities and they can't take everything with them, and so they're downsizing. Some are related to the fact that someone has passed away, though. Check the contents of any safety deposit box. It's good to know. I can recall when my mom was alive and I was working on her property, I went to the wrong bank. She had moved. She was in a different house, and so again, those changes. Do you know the bank? You want to review the will with the decedent's attorney to determine whether probate is needed. I had to call Social Security. I called the credit companies. I contacted these companies because identity theft is so real. And people will use a deceased person's Social Security number. So I let them know she's gone. So if anybody's trying to pull her credit, it's fraudulent because she's gone. Back to if that person has to leave the house, who's, the mortgage needs to continue to be paid, bills, homeowner insurance, all those things are still in play. We've talked a little bit about the expected. I had some unexpected things come up, and this is just a few of them. Extended car warranties. Be clear. Does that person carry an extended car warranty? And I think the thing that was so frustrating for me was, okay, your parent or your loved one has just died. Are you really thinking about, do they have an extended car warranty? That's the last thing on the list you're thinking about. But months later, when I was ready to retitle her car, I was looking through a file and I saw the warranty. And I said, well, let me call them and move it from her name to my name. And this is what they told me. Oh, well, we can't do that. Too much time has elapsed. You had 10 days. Who is thinking about a car with all the other responsibilities and a 10-day window to move that from her to me? Reverse mortgage. Now, I'm not here to bash reverse mortgages. I'm not. And I don't personally have experience with it. She explained to me that her father had enacted a reverse mortgage, and she was going back and forth with them because they wanted their money. And the only way that they were going to get their money was for her to sell the house. And that wasn't problematic because she had a house, but the time frame. And so they were really being quite aggressive to her. She was an only child. She had small children of her own, and she was trying to juggle being away from her small children, packing up this house. Should I just walk away from the house? I mean, these were some of the things. Should I just walk away from the house and let them take it? Should I even try to get any money that would be left in it for them to give to me? Reverse mortgages, people need to be clear with their loved ones, their intent when they're doing that. If your intent is not to leave that property, you need to let your family know, hey, I got a reverse mortgage and this is how it works. And so, you're not going to get the property. And then if they have to deal with whomever the reverse mortgage is with, what's the time frame that they're expecting you to get that property back into their hands or to pay back that amount of money from that reverse mortgage? I didn't really understand what a reverse mortgage was, but after, her talking with me and just her distress, I was like, I don't think people are clear about the constraints. There are some benefits, but there are also some constraints for those who have to deal with it once the person who has the benefits is gone. Unclaimed property. I'm trying to think of what led me to check on unclaimed property from my mom. I mean, I had so many things happen. Once she died, I got jury duty notice for her. I had to contact them and let them know she was deceased. But with the unclaimed property, I believe that I was just trying to make sure that I checked every box, looked at everything. And believe it or not, I did a search on unclaimed property for Washington State, and my mom had unclaimed property. So we got a check. So I did a check in Washington State, and I also did a check in Arkansas because she was had property in the state of Arkansas. So those were two places that I checked. So you may want to check for yourself. You might have some unclaimed property out there. Pending lawsuits. Money owed to you. Sometimes when you agree to lend somebody money, you write up a contract. Again, it is a laundry list of things that you have to consider. I think one of the challenges to this whole process is that people, unless you are someone who is dealing with it or has a loved one or find yourself in the position of having to orchestrate these things, people are just not concerned about this. And I think that's the thing that concerns me so much, because as the appraiser, by the time that I'm contacted on the list of things that you start out working with, I'm close to the bottom and you're almost finished. If you were to look at the checklist that you get from the county, having those tangible personal property assets done is close to being ready to submit the documentation to the court. But when I meet with clients, I get all kinds of questions. And I'm thinking, wow, these are just things that if someone had sat down and talked about them prior to death, it would be a whole different conversation. What I had to do for my dad was just a whole different walkthrough than what I had to do with my mom. And one of the dynamics that we just have not talked about in depth that is just so real are the intricacies of blended families and second husbands and additional other children and not being divorced or being divorced. As life evolves, we put things down. I have no slight to any attorneys in the room. I understand, I'm an appraiser. That's what I do. Attorneys are attorneys. That's what they do for their work. I would, try to find someone that has had an experience with a particular attorney and it's worked out for them. For me personally, when I consulted my Maryland attorney, it was through a legal service. And so even though I was in Maryland, I called them from Washington State and said, hey, I'm in Washington State and I need an attorney. And they were able to refer me to someone to work with. And even in the case of my mother, again, I was able to call the legal service here in Maryland and say, I'm working on this estate. I don't understand this. Can you explain it to me? And they were able to do that over the phone. So that worked for me. And that way you can ask those questions, even if you want to take care of it yourself. I hope you enjoyed this session. I've left a PDF link of the handouts that were given out during the talk, and my contact information is below as well.